Critically speaking, Portal is one of the best games ever made. Emotionally speaking, Portal is one of the best games ever made. It's rare that a game comes along with such a deep impact on popular culture. This massive, critically acclaimed piece was handcrafted by 5 people in 2 short years. Despite the rapid development cycle of Portal, many things ended up on the cutting room floor. Today, we're going to examine some of the behind-the-scenes content and learn how this became this. I'm Tyler McVicker, this is Valve News Network, and this is the history of Portal. In their senior year at the DigiPen Institute of Technology, a small group of students came together during the summer of 2004 to create a game that would become this group's senior project. The idea was student Kim Swift's, and with the help of Jeep Barnett, David Kircher, and Garrett Rickey, they proposed the basic idea to DigiPen that September. The proposal went well, and the group formed Nuclear Monkey Software. As reported on the Nuclear Monkey Software blog, the people really caught on to the Portal concepts and saw its potential. The game was first given the name McVicker Drop in September, which was chosen to differentiate itself online, as nothing at the time would show up in a search result. At this point, the game lacked an art team, and Nuclear Monkey Software actively seeked out new artists. Only about a week later, the team announced that 4 artists were interested in working on the game. Out of the 4, 3 would be remembered for working, being Paul Graham, Realm Lovejoy, and Scott Clintworth. On the 17th of September, Nuclear Monkey Software announced that the custom game engine they were working with, called Sketcher Engine, was working well with the stress tests, along with seamless portals being close to completion. The McVicker Drop continues development, with a public engine test being released on the 19th of November, and the first playable build on the 10th of December. It was in January that Nuclear Monkey Software announced that they had talked shop with Valve, specifically with employee Mike DeSalt. A few smaller builds of the game would be released over the next 3 months, but on April 7th, everything changed. In a blog post by Nuclear Monkey Software, a beta build was distributed, and the team also talks about an appointment they had at Valve headquarters. They were told to demo their game to the employees, including Gabe Newell, and the team was discovered while showing off their game at the annual DigiPen Senior Showcase that Valve employees attended. The events that transpired at the meeting were explained in detail long after the game was released, but at the time, the Nuclear Monkey Software blog posted on the 12th of April, explaining while showing McVicker Drop to Gabe Newell, he was very impressed and contracted the entire team to create McVicker Drop in the Source engine. It was later found out in an interview with Kim Swift that was conducted by IGN in 2007 that Gabe did not even let the team finish before stopping the demo to hire the entire team on the spot. Now, according to an old PC Gamer article from 2007, lead programmer on the project, Jeep Barnett, went home after the meeting to post on Facepunch, the Gary's Mod forum, to explain how he was hired by Valve based on his work on the McVicker Drop. Apparently, Gabe said something along the lines of, "I don't know who you people are, but I want to hire you to make this game in the Source engine." Kim Swift later stated in that interview that after the meeting, the entire team stood out in the parking lot for over 20 minutes, just gibbering to each other in a state of shock and excitement. It is safe to assume that development of what would become Portal started around late April to early May, and at this stage, most work was done with the Source engine itself, working on portals and the systems that go along with these things, such as lighting, viewability, and seamless transition. What small map work that was made was done for demonstration purposes, as the concepts did have to be playtested. At this point in development, the portals themselves were substantially different from what we know today, and although portals went through many variations during development, the first iteration were just 2 large pictures of Christopher Reeve's 1978 portrayal of Superman. They were functionally similar, moving the player from one portal to another, but the ability to see through was not completed, so Superman took its place. A very good example of where development was at this point is a leaked dev test map that is found in the Android port of Portal. Even though many parts of this map were changed and added over time as new mechanics were created, specifically this part is from that point in development, showing off Portal's ability to maintain surface collision and moving the player. Notice how the map consists mostly of dev textures and sparsely placed Half-Life 2 textures. Slowly, as the Portal technology was implemented, a few puzzles were created. Once a few chambers started to take shape and portals became more reliable, a progression between puzzles was found. Early on, the puzzles that did exist were very basic in their appearance. Platforms consisted of large hammer blocks, and any puzzle elements such as buttons and cubes borrowed heavily from Half-Life 2's model set. For example, as you can see here, Chamber 13 took on a Half-Life 2 appearance, which would evolve greatly over time. Buttons were small red bumps, and cubes were taken directly from Half-Life 2. Portals at this time took the form of RT cameras, as seen seen in this screenshot, which is the earliest screenshot available of the relaxation chamber. You could see through the portals, however they lacked much functionality from the retail version of the game, such as the image in the portals lacking anti-aliasing. Also, within this very early image, notice how the general aesthetic of Nova Prospekt exists, yet the puzzle is still recognizable. This brings up an interesting point about Portal. During development, one of the first things that were finished was the puzzles, and very early on, most, if not all of the chambers were completed. Most of the work that was done in the 2 years that Portal was developed went into refining the art style and gameplay to best benefit the player and convey what was needed to be done next. Look at this screenshot. This is the earliest screen available of Chamber 18. Notice how similar the layout is to the final product. Portal was playtested almost constantly, as the team made sure that nothing they created stumped the player due to the chamber not giving enough information. While on the subject of this shot of Chamber 18, notice how the turrets still exist, yet they're straight from Half-Life 2. And on a related note, the turret chamber went through many changes. However, the placement of turrets did not, as seen here. Some elements evolved greatly over time, even with the Nova Prospekt aesthetic. However, most elements stayed about the same, such as doors, cubes, catchers, and shooters. The connecting medium between the elements at first did not even exist, and eventually became what looked like physical wires. The idea of electricity was also constant in the later version of Nova Prospekt levels, evolving from the basic boxy rooms to an almost steampunk aesthetic with a mixture of combined architecture and large analog technology. For example, the timers seen within the relaxation chamber were at one point large analog clocks that would make loud clanks when ticking by. For a long time, large orange vats were seen in the corner of the room, which would cause large electrical arcing between them. The portal gun itself also borrowed heavily from this look, with one of the original iterations almost looking like the gravity gun, though larger and dirtier. Portals themselves also took a drastic change as well, going from the buggy RT cameras to large numbered rectangles that borrowed from Photoshop for its closed animation. The lighting of these levels went through the most changes during development, going back and forth between different variations of light and dark. However, it didn't matter, as the entire Half-Life look would be changed in favor of something completely different. Once the switch to the clean aesthetic was made, really only the room textures changed. Many of the puzzle elements stayed the same and took a while to change over, and once they did, they still went through many iterations. For example, the relaxation vault kept almost all of the original elements, such as the bed frame, radio, toilet, and analog clock. And the analog clock was used for the original GLaDOS introduction. It is unknown what had existed before GLaDOS was created. However, we do know how the original pre-GLaDOS ending played out. It is known that the player, instead of trying to confront an AI, would instead try to escape the facility. The ending consisted of exploring the background of the testing track, looking at the offices and lobby of Aperture Science, while the player tried to restart a power generator by collecting batteries scattered throughout the entire level. Once all the batteries were found, the player got to leave the facility. This ending was kept through a lot of early development. However, once GLaDOS was created, the ending shifted away from just escaping to confronting the AI behind the scenes. The endings past this point all had to do with defeating and or confronting GLaDOS. However, the circumstances of these confrontations changed dramatically. At first, once the player found GLaDOS, she would appear as a large floating cube-like mass with the ability to shoot energy balls at the player, which would have to be redirected back. The issue with this ending had to do with the nature of the energy balls. They were unpredictable at times and would sometimes even hit GLaDOS without the player doing a thing, or kill the player in one hit by accident. So the ending was slightly changed to include a slower moving laser, which would still have to be redirected back at GLaDOS. However, this had problems as well. With the laser being slow moving, it was easily avoidable, so any tension was lost. And if it did hit the player, it would only hurt slowly, which the player could run away from. Think of the lasers from Portal 2, as this is what it was based on. So the lasers were changed a few times and ended up being a rocket turret, which is very similar to the rocket turret we have now. However, in a much smaller room, as originally the ending took place in the same room throughout all previous iterations, and the fast-moving rockets made this version of the ending very difficult to predict, so the room was made larger and the ending was changed. Along with the player having to redirect the rockets towards GLaDOS, who at this point took the appearance of a large diamond of roller mines from Half-Life 2, the player would also have to deactivate infinitely spawning turrets from all around the room. Interestingly enough, the area that this took place in still exists in the final game as the large turret room during the finale of the escape sequence. This ending, even though it worked on a technical level, seemed to be a huge change in tone from the rest of the game. The entirety of Portal up until this point was a slower intellectual puzzle, and this ending was a high-intensity action bullet hell with never-ending shooting and mindless turret takedown. So the devs went back and redesigned the ending, and what they came up with was a high-intensity chase, where the player would have to solve small puzzles in pursuit of a fleeing GLaDOS. Once again, this ending technically worked, and the developers made quite a few small puzzles for it. However, the problem was that while in constant pursuit of GLaDOS, the playtesters would sometimes feel guilty for chasing down what would become a hopeless enemy. So once again, things had to be rethought. This is where the ending we all know came from. Essentially, all the things the dev had learned up until this point were used in this final version of the ending, with the player redirecting rockets back to take out different cores of the quickly decaying AI. This went through many small iterations as well over the few months of development. Most important additions being the large countdown clock and gas pumping into the room. This created a sense of tension without making the ending too intense in regard to gameplay. So the ending was finished and set in place. However, back in the testing chambers, there were still a few more additions that were removed quite quickly. For example, right at the change from the Nova Prospekt aesthetic to the new one, the goo appeared to take on an almost lava appearance, similar to the lava-like texture found in the game's files on launch. Doors also originally kept their rectangular appearance from the previous aesthetic, however, they quickly changed over to these interesting, almost Star Trek-like doors. All of the connecting wires in the game went through many iterations as well. What looked like wires in the Nova Prospekt levels became solid orange lines right at the switch. Cubes went from being Half-Life 2 assets to a substantially different models with many different features. It was around this time of development that this screenshot was taken, which up until this point was believed to be the earliest screenshot that was available of Portal's levels. The early gravity gun type Portal gun is seen along with early signage. The general theme of large white letters on a black background was also seen in the chamber signs, seen in this early version of the relaxation chamber, where you can see the chambers being listed as Test-A00. Also seen here in this early version of Chamber 18, the mechanism pulling the chamber panels once took on a much more complicated look with many moving parts. Once again, there were many small changes being made to the chambers, but the general puzzles stayed the same. A lot of work was being done at this point, nearing the beginning of summer 2006, because in July 2006, Valve was about to make one of the largest announcements in the company's history. On July 13, 2006, at 2:34 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, EA had a huge surprise at their summer showcase for the entire gaming community. What most thought was just a smaller conference for EA to show off games they were going to be releasing throughout late 2006, everyone was shocked when Valve co-founder and CEO Gabe Newell walked out on stage and dropped the announcement of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, the return of the long-thought-dead Team Fortress 2, and a brand new game, Portal. A trailer for each game was shown to the attendees of the conference, which were later released online a few days later. Out of the trailers, Portal was something no one really had seen before, and most game journalists tried to compare it to Prey's Portal sections, as they really had nothing to compare it to. The trailer took the gaming community by storm because of how well it explained the concepts of the game and the general tone, which was made most apparent by the incredible voice work by Ellen McLean. However, McLean's voice lines were only recorded a few weeks before the trailer's release, but GLaDOS as a character had been in the game for months, so who was voicing GLaDOS before McLean? Well, the Portal team actually used an AT&T text-to-speech program with a voice named Crystal, which was ran through some filters and effects. McLean's voice was actually quite last minute, as was most of the trailer. In fact, most of the audio heard in the trailer is fake, and was nowhere in the game at the time. Sounds like the turret firing and the fire pit were added later in editing. In fact, the turret at this point in development still used sound effects from Half-Life 2. In fact, they used this sound effect. A video of a playable demo of Portal seen at a German games convention on August 23, 2006 appeared online shortly after this German conference. And this video showed an early version of Chamber 13, with most of the major changes being in the shading and lighting of the level. The portals did make a large change as well, as seen in the second convention where Portal was shown. The Xbox 06 conference, or X06 for short, was held on September 26th through the 28th of 2006. And the Portal demo shown shows an early version of the Portal swirl state. And this is how they would state for much of the later public showings of the game, such as GDC and the highly publicized Game Informer preview. Most of the difference seen have to do with lighting and slight detail changes, such as the X's being shown above the turrets in Chamber 16 originally being this tattoo-like marking. The final crunch time in development would take place in the months leading up to E3, because during E3 of 2007, Portal looked very similar to the final product, with the only substantial difference being a change in crosshair. This crosshair actually is arguably better, as it gives the player more information. This early crosshair has 2 rings on each side, showing where portals can be shot, what portals have been shot, and the moving inner bar shows how long it will take before the portals will open, depending on the distance from the player to the surface. It is unknown why this was changed, but it is known why the portals were changed from their original swirl counterparts. The portals going from the swirls to the final variations had nothing to do with art style and everything to do with the Xbox 360. When the orange box was first announced, it was going to be released for the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. And while the games were being developed on the PC, during the last few months of development, changes were being made to all of the games so they would run smoothly on the console hardware. The earlier swirl portals actually took up too much VRAM to properly run on the Xbox, so they were changed to a version that did not take up as much. The game finally did release after many delays on October 9th, 2007, and Portal, up against steep competition for attention by gaming juggernauts Half-Life and Team Fortress, became the surprise smash hit of the orange box. Since all of Valve had been working on 3 different games simultaneously for the release of the orange box, Gabe Newell had an interesting idea to give his employees a rest. While riding off the amazing innovation that had happened with Portal, Gabe Newell shut down Valve and let all the employees design whatever they wanted, with the intention of making another amazing gameplay mechanic for a sequel to Portal. However, it did not work out completely as planned, and we'll be talking about that in my next video. But anyways, that was the history of Portal. I would very much like to thank all the people that helped me out making this video, as there are quite a few. Keep in mind, I'm always looking to try and improve my content, and I feel like this video kind of shows that. But if there's anything in this video that you feel like wasn't perfect or should have been changed somehow, I'm always open to criticism. Feel free to email me criticism, which my email is down in the description, or put it in a comment in the comment section below. Thank you once again very much for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this video, as it's taken me over a month to make this one. So thank you very much once again. But anyways, I'm Tyler McVicker. This is Valve News Network. Have a good day. Adios.